Alright, guys. It's been a while since I've given y'all a trip update, so I thought I'd just check in and let y'all know why I'm not in South Carolina yet. I've met some wonderful new family in Arizona, and they're really speaking to my soul. And I had a realization that this trip is it's about personal growth too, and also that it's hard to say whether my tweeting and YouTubing and talking to people is actually having a bigger impact than my soulful belief and resonating and manifesting that we are winning this one, and that having faith and confidence that that's the future that I'm trekking towards, because I do believe that spiritual power has power. And so I've been pondering with myself about whether my time is being better spent here or in South Carolina. Actually, not that I'm not going to go. I'm excited to get on the road later today, but I think that was a pretty cool realization that made me feel a lot less worried about if I'd been wasting my time when I should be saving the world right now, because you can't waste your time if you're doing what is amazingly wonderful for your soul. And I have blossomed into an even more powerful seer because of the awesome friends that I've met. Now, one of the things that I had an awesome conversation with them about was the anti vax issue in 45 seconds. And I said, hey, can we talk about that for 30 seconds to this guy? And he's like, oh, well, we're going to need more time to talk about it than that. And I was like, okay, just bear with me for a second. I was like, well, what I kind of dislike about this issue is you have people that are really extreme on both sides that aren't willing to listen to the nuances of the other person's argument. Like, on the one hand, you have people who say, you know, vaccines are perfectly safe and anyone who's anti vax is just crazy. And the fact of the matter is, there is a chance that your son or daughter's immune system might be severely compromised by the shock of a vaccine. And if you don't treat that, your immune system stays compromised and you develop allergies, autism, asthma, all sorts of things. That's a very treatable condition. Now, it really frustrates me that there are people out there that end up with, you know, mentally or physically impaired kids from something that they could have had treated. And I think that that's very damaging. On the other side, you do have people that are going, I'm not going to vaccinate my kids because they cause autism and all these sorts of things. And it's like, it's curable, it's treatable. It's just something you need to be aware of, so that if your kid starts to show these symptoms, you make sure that they go away and don't become a permanent factor in your life. And if your kid happens to be one of those kids that reacts really adversely, then you might want to consider not vaccinating. Sure, but you don't just need to do it out of as a precaution because your kid might suffer from these things, because again, they're treatable. And so I said all that, and the guy that said, "Oh, we're gonna need more than 30," he didn't have anything to say. He was just like, "Oh," and that's that's what my game is all about. I read a ton of books. I try to come to the uh, holistic understanding of the situation, what the people all the way over here and the people all the way over there are believing, what the nuance of the issue in the middle might look like, so that if someone is as stuck in their beliefs as they can be, I can hopefully present them a crystallized nugget of the whole thing in such a way that won't offend them, so that they can broaden their mind a bit. Um, I've had some very humbling conversations and interactions on this first couple of weeks of my trip that have really opened my eyes to when that both will and won't work. My own uncle has been frustrating the pants off of me. And I came to realize in a sort of spiritual humility moment that that just makes me normal. I can't tell you how many of my friends have that uncle that frustrates the heck out of them, because all he wants to do is talk about politics, but he's so far, in my case, left, but it wouldn't bother me any less if he was so far right. It's just, he's uh, convinced that he's knowledgeable on the topic. He's been a politician for a portion, local politician for a decent portion of his life, and he's a lawyer. So he really does believe that he's well read on these topics, and he reads a lot of books and tries to stay informed. The issue is he stays informed with CNN and MSNBC, so he truly is one of those people that believes that we need to, you know, increase our forces, keep our forces in the Middle East, because that's how we prevent Russia and China from taking over the world. And I'm sorry, but China's taking over the world by kicking our butts economically. Wasting our resources is opening the door for them to trample all over us. And it's opening the door for Russia to trample all over us too, quite frankly, because if Russia sees we're embroiled over here, over there, all they need to do is wait for a time when we're too busy to stop them, and then they can annex the Crimea, and we go, oh, well, we don't want to start World War III. You already did that, so Russia, 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 Russia. It's like, if you want to prevent these things from happening, have a strong country that can say, hey, if you do that, we are going to do things that will make it hurt for you. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. We won the Cold War because Russia got dragged into a war they did not want to fight. And we made it, just like Vietnam, we made it a very painful, long, protracted waste of resources for them. Now, is it really in our best interests as a country, or the interest of the Middle East, to get embroiled in one of those conflicts so Russia can do the same to us? No. If they want to invade, they will be the invaders. And then, if you want to sponsor local militia to try to make it less fun for Russia and also all the people that live in that country, that's your prerogative. But at the very least, we won't be the ones that are economically getting the short end of the stick on that one. It's not in our best interest to have 150 odd military bases all over the planet that cost us money and are a great opportunity for someone to poke at us, so we have to go devote more resources to, well, whatever they decide to poke at us with. It's not a position of strength, it's a position of weakness, really. It's what I'm coming to realize. But talking to my uncle, my own flesh and blood, about these sort of issues, as a dude who has read 300 books in the last 3 years and tries to stay really informed and watches a broad array of reporting from the right and the left, whenever I bring these sort of things up, he says, oh, you've just listened to too much propaganda. You think that it's, if you can't refute what I'm actually saying and you just need to say that what I'm saying cannot possibly be true because I've listened to too much propaganda, maybe you need to do a little bit more research, because I didn't have to once tell him that his opinion was full of too much propaganda, even though it so painfully was, because I could just present a logical counter argument. Another interaction that really made my soul shine a bit was with this gal, we'll call her Rebecca. I met her outside of a botanical garden in Northern California on my way heading south, and she was one of those people that believes a woman's place is in the home, and it is shameful that a woman would run for president, and that men and women have different brains and men are meant to lead, right? One of those people. And that gave me a bit of pause. First thing she asked when I mentioned Tulsi Gabbard was, is she pro-life? And I really should have paid attention to the fact that she said pro-life, not pro-choice, but that's a good note for the future. But I asked her politely, can you explain that more? You said you think that's, I don't remember, I just said the word, reprehensible we'll say, but I know that wasn't the word she said. Shameful, yeah. You think it's shameful that Tulsi is running for president? Can you please politely explain why? Like, I'm legitimately just curious. And I think I even gave her one of these, like, please, I would love to know. Come in for a mental hug and let's grok. And she did. We talked for probably, somewhere between 7 and 12 minutes. She told me a whole lot about why she believes what she believes. I even threw her a bone and said that, well, in countries where people can get whatever education they want and they've got a lot of opportunity, we do see more men tend to go into math and sciences and more women tend to go into some of the more compassionate industries. And so, you might have something to that in general, your average woman, your average man might have a brain or certainly a body that can work differently. Not that there's not pretty much anything that a woman can do that a man can do, but there are things that we're sort of naturally inclined to, whether that's societal or biological. I'm not going to try to weigh in on, but the fact that when you relieve the society pressures, you end up seeing more, a larger discrepancy between men and women in the STEM fields does lend some credence to that. But don't get it twisted. I would never extend that logic to suggest that a woman cannot be fit to do anything, especially not lead our country, because the best presidential candidate I've seen in my lifetime, probably since JFK, or maybe even longer, because, JFK still had his his mob ties, there were still things he wasn't willing to talk about, and Tulsi refuses to lie to the American people full stop and tells the whole truth more or less every time, except for when it would be political suicide, in which case she will just tell as much of the truth as she can and leave the rest to people like us. Now, that was a very humbling and enlightening experience, talking to someone that I could not agree with on very much. And at the end, I shook her hand and said, "It's been a real pleasure disagreeing with you, Rebecca." And that got a chuckle out of her. And, I don't think I changed her mind. She's still going to vote for Trump because the woman's place is in the home or whatever. But I do think that when Tulsi Gabbard becomes president, that gal that I'm calling Rebecca is going to have a perspective broadening moment, as well as the many, many other people that believe like she does. Because you've been told your whole life that women aren't fit to lead, that a woman's place is in the home, and now here's one leading our country better than all the men that ever have. And that doesn't necessarily have to change how you want to live your life or how you want to believe. But for some, it might. For some, it might. And so I got two very powerful lessons from these interactions. One, unfortunately, you're not always going to get as much respect from your family as you will from a total stranger. And two, a little bit of humility can go a long way. You catch more flies with honey. And it's not always about winning over their vote. Sometimes it's about gaining from their understanding. Sometimes it's about planting a seed that might germinate later. And this trip's really, really made my soul feel very light. I feel like I'm making a big difference, even though I've only spent a fraction of my days actually actively campaigning. Although I will say I've left a fair number of Admit One Tulsi tickets basically everywhere I've crashed, and left flyers in every single rest stop, bathrooms, toilet seat cover dispenser that I could. So I bet you those are going to get more people than I could possibly imagine, if I'm being perfectly honest. Now, on to a couple stranger topics that some of y'all might be really excited to hear about and some of y'all might be tuning out pretty quick over. I have aliens, and I have an actual magical event that cannot be described in anything other than the beyond physical. And there wasn't a single person there doing magic. It was, I was the magician in this case. Like, if this was a sleight of hand trick, I did it to myself without my consciously being aware of it. And it's truly cannot be explained in any way other than magic. And ironically, it happened while we were playing Magic the Gathering. So let's start with that one, because clearly my mind's already on it. And the potential, we'll call it most literal sense, unidentified flying object situation we'll get to next. I'm going to be visiting Roswell later this trip, so that'll be fun too, but we'll get there. So, I'm playing Magic with my new friends/family. They're teaching me, because I've never actually played before. My brother plays a lot, but I've avoided it because I don't like the vibe that my brother's friends get into when they're playing that game. I'm not even sure I want to let them know that I know how to play the game, but that's another issue, another story. So we're getting to the end of this game. It's getting really intense, and I'm planning out basically my last turn. I've got 7 cards in my hand, and for almost this whole game, for anyone familiar with Magic, I've been trying to make sure to make my land drop, because I recognize I've got a lot of card draw in my blue deck that I'm learning on, and I don't really know how the game works super well, but I recognize that having more mana is good, and that's something that I can aim to do with this deck, and aiming to do something seemed like a better way to try to bear useful fruit than just playing cards, So that was something I set out to do in that game, was to try to make sure I had a land to play every turn. And it's a good thing I had a lot of card draw to make that happen, because most of the time I was playing off the top of my deck to find that land. And I do think that in the end, I was playing against a green deck that was ramping up like crazy and a black deck that never really got started. But I recognized that green deck was going to crush me, and the only thing I had going for me was trying to ramp up my lands faster than they could, because every single time I played a land, I also gained 1 health, in order to eventually be able to play out enough cards to slowly build into something that might be able to challenge that green deck that already had just a crazy field, right? And so, like I said, this entire game I was kind of focusing on lands, and I was struggling playing off the top of my deck to try to find my next land drop. So now we get to my last turn. I've got, 7 cards in my hand after I play my card draws, and I get my land, so I play it. So now there's 6 cards left, and I've got, I want to say about 14 land to play off of, because this was a pretty long game. I think they were being nice to me to let me actually learn the ropes. That was very kind of them. But I'm looking at my hand, thinking about what I want to do, figuring out how I want to make my last big play, because I've got a few cards that can exile things from his field, and I've got a bunch of flyers, so if I can exile enough creatures to get past his blockers, I might be able to make a pretty good hit before he then resummons them next turn with the mana he has. So that was kind of my plan, was, bounce his creatures, have a good round, and then see what happens next. I didn't notice he had just played 2 really powerful creatures the round before. Thankfully, they weren't ready to block me, so I didn't lose my slightly less powerful creatures, so I did get to throw some good damage his way that round. Bottom line, I spent a lot of time, I played the cards from my hand, and then I spent a lot of time looking at the field, reading out everything, realizing that I'd messed up by looking at those creatures that I should have dispelled instead of the ones that I did, because I could have made my big move 1 turn later and probably made it more effective. But so I spent a lot of time in my mind not looking at the cards after I'd played my cards. There were 3 cards left in my hand, and I'm 100% positive none of them were land, because I was playing off the top of my deck to get that last land to play that turn. After surveying through, looking at my turn, I end my turn, I do 19 damage or something. It now goes to the green deck guy's turn, and he prepares to crush both of us. And we get into this situation where he's doing exactly as much damage as I have life points, and I could have blocked with a 2/2 and ended up with 2 health when it's all said and done. But I look down at my hand, and I'm looking at 3 islands. And then I look at the top card of my deck, because I have a card that lets me do that on the field, and it's also an island. And my brain just kind of fell off, and it took about 3 minutes for it to find its way back in here, because truly I was just stunned by this. Like, magic just magicked me. And I think the guy playing the green deck, I'm not sure if he believed me or just that I was making up some crap because I didn't want to lose ungraciously, but I know the one playing the black deck definitely believed me. But they've got a magic house over there, and after seeing something like that, you can no longer personally deny the fact that there are things in this universe that work metaphysically through the mind that we don't understand through just raw physics. I mean, I was focusing on land that entire game, and then after the most stressful moment of the game, where I'm really making my brain whir, I look back down and I've managed to prestige my own hand into lands. And so I look around. I look under my butt. I look at my feet. I look through my entire mana library to see if maybe I switched a stack of cards. I looked on the top of my deck to see if the cards looked familiar. My hand was gone. And so then I turned to the green deck guy and I asked him, hey, how many lands were in this deck? And he says, I think there were 24. So I start counting, and I counted 27 lands. And he says, oh, maybe I did not know the number of lands that were in that deck. And I'm thinking, or maybe the 3 cards in my hand just turned into land, and you really need to pay attention next time you use this deck if you're missing some cards. If they're cards that you used to have 3 of that you now only have 2 of, or if there's a card that's just not in your deck anymore, because I have a really sneaking suspicion maybe they'll turn back. Maybe I'll go count those cards later today, and I'll find that there are 24 lands in that deck again, and just go, huh. But, whoa. And the cheekiest part of it all is it happened. I wouldn't make this up. I have no real reason to, and it makes me seem kind of crazy to a lot of people. And quite frankly, I'm making this channel to be a creditable source on useful information, so it doesn't really behoove me to just make up nonsense about a card game no one cares about. This happened. I can't emphasize that enough. And you're welcome to not believe me on it. That's fine too. But it's so cheeky, because even the people sitting at that table need to have faith in my telling the truth, because I'm the only person who witnessed it. As far as they know, I had 3 cards in my hand, and at the end I had 3 cards in my hand. And I'm saying they used to not be lands, and now they're all lands. I could be making that up. Like, realistically, it would not be that hard for me to have just drawn and played and had nothing but land left after that turn before, and then been like, whoa, guys, I can't believe this happened. I really had a plan and now I don't. I'm so disappointed. Oh, and look, it's so convenient you're gonna kill me this round anyway. Like, but like, sometimes that's how the universe works. It's cheeky. It wasn't meant to be for anyone else, but it is undeniable, like soul-thumping proof for me that I can't ever unsee. And I think I really needed that to reassure myself that my mental work to get Tulsi elected by manifesting and believing that that's the future we're heading in might have a bigger impact than anything I could have done in this week by being on the road headed towards South Carolina as fast as I could. And now having that confidence in belief, because I already felt these things in my soul and in my heart, and I wanted to believe, but now I've seen, raw, indisputable, undeniable evidence for myself anyway, that happened. And it's so cheeky and poetic that even the people that were there with me when it happened need to take my word for it. Like, wild. And so a few days before that, I was sitting on my grandma's back deck looking out at the stars, and I saw something strange. Do you ever see those satellites going across the sky? Not the ones that blink, but just, it looks like a moving star, basically. I'm sure you have. I saw 4 of them in a perfect line, just across the entire sky. I've never seen 2 in a row before, and they were evenly spaced, just whoa. I don't want to go into too much pondering and pontificating as to what that might have been, but that's something wild. A most literal, unidentified flying object. And I wish I'd made note of what direction they were flying in. I guess if that's west, would have been roughly sort of like northeast, I suppose, which is the direction of Roswell. Not to get all weird about it, but that is weird. I'm excited to go check that place out, camp in the desert for a few days and see what I see, because, at this point I know the technology's out there. I've read about it. I've listened to people who have seen it. Maybe it was time that I finally had my own encounter. I actually, not to get even weirder, but when I was telling this to one of my friends, I had more than a thought. I had a voice come into my head tell me, you weren't ready. And it really sent a shiver down my spine because it said you weren't ready. Not you aren't ready, you weren't ready to have that encounter. And this was just talking with someone who has personally interacted with and seen aliens, supposedly extraterrestrials, I'll say. And I've learned not to approach anything, healthy skepticism, but not to discredit anyone's opinion, no matter how strange, if they seem genuine, and take it with a grain of salt, of course. But when he started talking about how, I've had plenty of encounters, and I said, I haven't had any yet, a voice that wasn't mine came into my head and said, you weren't ready. Not I wasn't ready, you weren't ready. Whoa. And he was saying that that's how they communicate, right? So, who knows? Anyway, sorry to get a bit off track on this one, but I hope y'all found it entertaining, because my mind is reeling right now. I've just whoa. I'm really glad that I decided to take an extra 5 days to hang out at my grandma's house, because they've been irreplaceable. And on the mental plane, I think I've probably done as much, if not more, good for Tulsi's campaign sitting here in this bed than I have putting out all those flyers in the truck stops. So I'm being reassured of that by a universal energy. So I feel confident that we're going to win this one. And Tulsi's got the best spiritual armor that we could possibly imagine, and people are dead aware of what happened in 1963 and the sort of games that Corruptopus plays in trying to make it happen again. So I don't think we get another 1963. I don't think we get another 2016. 2020. Pick up your trash 2020. And we're repping Water Girl. And the more Bernie apologizes for corruption-free joke Biden, the more people realize which of their candidates they're considering actually deserves their vote, actually is fit to lead this country, and which can't even rein in and lead their own campaign. So, with that, thanks for tuning in, America. Thank you for gabbing aloha. Please share this with your friends. And don't let them skeptical Skeksis steal your essence, my dudes.